going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I hope that you're enjoying your weekend. Thanks so much for tuning in to another Magic review. Before I get started, I wanted to mention that I have no disclosures. I have no affiliation with Dani DaOrtiz or Penguin Magic. So today I'm going over chapter 1 of his new Chaos project. So this project focuses on the idea of chaotic card magic. That is card magic where your spectators apparently have many options and choices to kind of mess you up, yet things seem to work out in your favor. And this is very characteristic of Dani DaOrtiz's magic. So this first chapter is called Very Lucky, and you can pick this up for $10 if you want, or you could subscribe to the whole subscription for $90. You're going to get about an hour of video instruction where you're going to watch Dani DaOrtiz perform this effect called Very Lucky, and then he goes over a explanation of the effect, and he spends about 45 minutes going over the theory and psychology of the routine and why it is such a strong routine and doesn't feel like a procedure heavy semi-automatic trick to your spectators. Now, as usual, I'm going to try to go over what you're going to learn here, give you guys my impressions, answer your questions, and give you my rating. So the routine is very easy to understand. You're going to take out a piece of paper. This is in case you haven't already watched it. You're going to make a prediction and leave it in full view. You're going to take a deck of cards that's been in use. Maybe you have a borrowed deck. You're going to divide it in about half, give half to your spectator, and tell them to shuffle those up. You have them think of a number. You tell them, think of a number from 1 to 10 or 1 to 15, and then you're going to show them the cards, and you're going to tell them to remember the card that's at their number. It's that simple. Then you're going to cut the deck to the table a couple of times to randomize the order, but you hand the cards to the spectator and you tell them that you want them to pass some cards from the top to the bottom to further mix things up. Tell them to pass, the number they're thinking of, and then you tell them, let's take it another step further. Why don't you deal out those cards into 3 piles any way you want? So they deal them out into 3 piles, and then afterward you tell them that they can put them back together in any order that they want to. Now, under these conditions, you could spread the cards on the table, let them open up the prediction and see that you've predicted exactly the position of where their thought of card is now. And you can point out to them that had they dealt out the cards differently, or had they put those 3 piles back together differently, that things could have ended up in a totally different place. So that is the routine that you're going to learn, and you're going to learn about the origins of that, how Dani DaOrtiz came up with this, and of course, the psychology of why this works. He spends a lot of time going over different theories, ideas about how to present a card magic trick that doesn't become too confusing to the spectator, yet in their mind there is this sense of randomization or chaos that helps aid in just the overall emotional effect that the spectator is realizing or experiencing in that moment. I thought that his whole concept of closing the door is just genius. This idea where you're answering questions that the spectator may have come up with during the routine before they even think of it. This is extremely clever and a great way of designing any type of magic routine, because before the spectator even can question, well, what if, you're already addressing that, so the spectator is not even going to have that question. And basically, you're closing all these doors of what if on them before they could even be asked. So the spectator will feel like they had complete control of what was going on the whole time. Things feel spontaneous, impromptu, off the cuff, and it feels like that there's no way that this is going to work out for you, is the general sensation that you get when you watch the performance and when you go out and road test this for people. So let's get into what my impressions are of this. I'm going to just try to answer a couple of questions you guys have. So I really enjoyed this a lot. When I first saw the trailer, it completely fooled me. And the main reason why was because of the way that the spectator can put together the 3 piles of cards any way they want. That fooled me. I was like, wait, that's not possible. And so for that reason, I was really fooled by it. And I think that that's the most memorable aspect of the routine when you perform it for other people. I enjoyed pointing that part out when I performed it for people. So the biggest thing I think that some people may have some issue with when they learn this is that sometimes you may have to do a switch of the prediction. And that's really what fooled me. Although you can perform this like in an impromptu way completely, where you're not going to do any kind of switch or have that option, but you will have to kind of magician's force the combination of those three packets. So I do mention that to you guys because that's something you may want to know. But I think that this was a very clever constructed routine. He's taken a semi-automatic mathematic card trick and he has elaborately dressed this up so it doesn't feel like a procedure heavy effect is really what it comes down to. And I had really positive experiences road testing this on the people that I've chosen to use it with them. It felt completely natural and off the cuff, and to them it was absolutely impossible. So let's get into those questions that you guys have. Difficulty wise, I would say that the card handling aspect is absolute beginner level. There's no sleight of hand with the cards really, but you may have to do a switch of a prediction, which is extremely easy to do. And Dani DaOrtiz does go over a couple of different options for you on the instructional, but it's so easy because there's really no heat on it in that moment, because everyone is focusing so much on the cards that when you just hand them the piece of paper or the folded up bald napkin to open it up and read it, they really are not even expecting anything at that moment. So I think that it's not even something to even worry about. I don't even really think it's like something that anyone's going to really catch you out on. But I would say that for difficulty wise, some people may think that this is like intermediate difficulty just because you may have to do that part. In terms of the setup, there's a very minor setup, and that only setup is that you will have to carry with you, a couple of small predictions. And when I say couple, I mean 3, that's it, or 2. You're only gonna have to carry 2 with you because the third one you're gonna write out yourself right there in real time. Again, if you don't want to do the switch, you don't need to. You could do this completely impromptu using anything that's there, but the only difference is that when they reassemble the 3 packets, you're gonna have to kind of direct them or kind of magician's force them. Although I would urge you to perform this the way that Dani DaOrtiz has instructed, because it's so much stronger and you can really point out all of these different places where the spectator had different options where things would have ended up totally differently. So the next question you guys may have is, are there any card gimmicks or gaffes? There's no card gimmicks or gaffes. Again, like I said before, you can use a borrowed deck. In terms of the angles, is there any angle issues? I don't think so. I did not perform for a huge group of people, but I did perform for more than one person at a time, and I didn't have any issues at all with the angles. Again, as I mentioned before, if you have some kind of issue with making a very simple switch, then to you that may be an issue. But again, it's so simple that you're not going to really have any issue that I can see. And then the next question is the principle that's used here new? And I'll tell you, no, it's not. It's actually really interesting because Dani DaOrtiz talks about in the instruction that he's used the principle in many of his other projects. And I actually do remember reading the principle in his first book on semi-automatic card magic. In fact, it was in the first chapter of that book where he talks about that he learned the principle from a friend of his. But that's not the first place that I've seen it. I've actually seen this principle in an old book on card magic by Rufus Steele. And I think that book was either from 1932 or 1952. I can't remember offhand, but it was called The Last Word on Card Magic. I think that's what it was called, at least The Last Word on Card Magic. And there was a routine in there that used the whole deck. And that routine, what would happen would be that the spectator would cut off a small group of cards and count them. And then you would have them look at the card and remember it's at that number that they're thinking of in their mind. So they would think of a card, and then you would ask the spectator to think of a number from 25 to 40. You would cut the cards, and then now you could count down to that number that they're thinking of, and their card is in that position. So that was the first place that I saw this principle. And I think that effect was called something like they don't tell you anything, or they say nothing, or something like that. I don't know. If you have that Rufus Steele book, you can look it up. But it's not the only place that you can find this. I do remember that this was also published in the Linking Ring, maybe like in the 90s somewhere. I can't remember exactly, but I don't even remember the routine that's in there, to be honest with you guys, but I do remember seeing it in there. And John Bannon also has published an effect that uses this exact same placement principle. And I think that you can find that in his book, Smoke and Mirrors, where you can find it's like an anti-clock placement principle. You can find it in his book. So you can see that the actual principle that Dani DaOrtiz is using is not new to him, although the way he uses it is very original. So it is interesting when you look at the history of this stuff, and I wonder if Dani DaOrtiz himself even knows this stuff. He might or might not. I don't know. There's so much in the world of magic and card magic that I'm sure that there's other places that you'll find the exact same principle used that I don't know about, maybe you know about. And if you do, maybe you can leave us a comment below. That'd be actually really interesting to learn about it. So let's get into the rating of this, and then I'm going to give you guys a couple of final thoughts. So as you guys can see, I rated this as 4 out of 5, which is extremely favorable. And of course, I would recommend that you guys pick this up because I think you're going to like it if you're into card magic in general. For originality, I gave him 3.5 out of 5. Again, he's not using, the method's not original to him, but just his structure of how he's using it in the routine is original to him. Practicality, I would rate this as 4 out of 5 because it's extremely practical. And if you just perform the impromptu version, then you really don't need anything set up. In terms of the structure of the routine, I also would rate that as 4 out of 5. Highly favorable. And the main reason is because, again, like I said, he takes a semi-automatic math trick and he's dressed it up really well, where it doesn't feel procedure heavy whatsoever. The teaching on this, I would give Dani DaOrtiz 5 out of 5. You know, English is not his first language, but he does an amazing job going over how to perform this. Everything is very clear. I love how he goes into the theory of it and the justification of why this works for people, which I think that's the most valuable part of the lesson of this masterclass. And as I mentioned, a separate category here would just be the theory of you know, how this works and the chaos and everything he goes into. I would rate that as 4.5 out of 5. Extremely valuable for all of your magic. And then finally, the price, I would rate it as 3 out of 5, which is favorable, definitely. So that gives us a final score of 4.0 out of 5. Highly favorable, definitely something that you're going to like if you're into card magic. So I think that this is something a lot of people would definitely like a lot. If you like Dani DaOrtiz's magic, then you probably would definitely like this. But even as such, I think that a lot of people would just find this as something that would be great to have to use, especially in those situations where you're just presented with a deck of cards and you want to perform something. You want to perform a prediction effect that looks impossible. This is a great effect that you can go right into, even if you don't have the extra predictions on you. You probably could set up for it in the bathroom if you wanted to, really. But even so, as I mentioned, it's just great as an impromptu piece, even with just one prediction. Anyway, that's everything I wanted to tell you guys about this first chapter of Dani DaOrtiz's Chaos Project. Hopefully this has piqued your interest, and as usual, if you guys have any questions or concerns about this, just leave me a comment below. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you on the next review.